My name is Madison Rae. At 28, I was 9 months pregnant, my swollen belly, a constant heavy reminder of the new life about to arrive. On the outside, everything seemed picture perfect, our cozy two-story home, with the white picket fence, my well-groomed husband Oliver, and a future that was supposed to be bright. But behind the front door, the reality was nothing like the dream. Oliver worked a white-collar job at a mid-sized tech company. People always said how lucky I was to have a husband with a steady paycheck and good manners. They didn't see how every evening he'd come home, drop his suit jacket on the couch, and immediately retreat into his own world, ignoring the dinner I'd spent hours cooking. On weekends, he'd disappear to his parents' house just a few miles away. He said it was to help out, but really it was because he didn't want to be here. I spent my days trying to be the perfect wife. I woke up early to pack Oliver's lunch and brew his coffee, even though my back ached so much I could barely stand. I scrubbed the floors and folded his shirts, thinking if I did everything right, maybe he'd smile at me the way he used to. But as my due date crept closer, the weight of my growing baby was matched only by the weight of the loneliness in my chest. I thought being a good wife meant never complaining. But each time Oliver's sharp voice cut through the room, each time he compared me to his mother, or rolled his eyes at my efforts, a small part of me wondered, is this what love is supposed to feel like? By the time the sun had begun to rise the next morning, I was already awake. My body was stiff and aching from a restless night's sleep. Oliver had left for work with nothing more than a dismissive wave, and I was left alone in our quiet house. I shuffled into the kitchen, trying to find some small comfort in brewing a fresh pot of coffee. The warm scent filled the air, but it didn't fill the emptiness inside me. Every day felt like a loop: wake up, cook, clean, rest only when my body threatened to collapse. My feet were so swollen, they barely fit into the old slippers I wore around the house. I told myself it was all temporary, that once the baby was here, maybe Oliver would change. Maybe he would finally see me as more than a shadow moving around the edges of his life. But deep down, I knew better. The sharpness in Oliver's voice never dulled. He would come home from work and glance at the dinner I had spent all afternoon preparing, his nose wrinkling like I'd set out scraps for a stray dog. "Is this really what you're serving me?" He'd say, his words as cutting as broken glass. "You know my mother would never serve something like this." It was always his mother. She was the gold standard I could never reach, no matter how hard I tried. In his eyes, she was perfection. In mine, she was an invisible judge whose approval I would never earn. I started to dread evenings. Each time the clock ticked closer to 6 o'clock, I felt my shoulders tighten with the fear of what mood Oliver would walk in with that night. Some nights, he wouldn't say much, just eat in silence, and then vanish into the bedroom without a word. Those were the good nights. Other nights, he would find some flaw in everything. The rice was too soft, the sauce too bland, my belly too big, my face too tired. No matter what I did, it was never enough. When he snapped, he didn't yell, at least not always. His voice was low and cold, dripping with disappointment. And that hurt more than shouting. It was as if he was always reminding me I was the problem. I was the reason he wasn't happy. During the day, I tried to distract myself with small things, writing in my journal, taking photos of the garden, watching the bright petals of the flowers sway in the breeze. I posted the pictures online, and friends would leave kind comments. "You're glowing," they'd say. "Such a beautiful mom to be." If only they knew how my hands trembled as I held the camera, how I forced the smile in every shot. Even grocery shopping had become a battlefield. The weight of my belly made every step feel like wading through wet cement, but I refused to ask for help. Oliver said I was just pregnant, not sick, so I carried the bags home alone each trip, a quiet victory for my pride. In those moments, I imagined the baby inside me, small and safe, listening to the beat of my heart. I promised that baby we would get through this. I promised that someday things would be better. But each promise felt weaker than the last. I noticed how Oliver would glance at my belly and sigh like it was an inconvenience rather than a miracle. He didn't touch me, or the baby bump didn't talk about baby names or nursery colors. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at his phone, scrolling through endless videos or work emails, his face lit by the blue glow of the screen, but never by the excitement of becoming a father. Still, I tried. I cooked his favorite meals, hoping to earn a fleeting compliment. I kept the house spotless, even when the smell of cleaning chemicals made me lightheaded. I bit my tongue when he compared my cooking to his mother's. I wanted him to be proud of me, of us. And yet, the more I tried to be perfect, the more I felt like a ghost in my own home. Late at night, when the weight of the baby pressed down on my ribs and sleep refused to come, I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling. My mind would wander to the dreams I once had, of a happy family, of a man who would hold me and tell me I was enough. Those dreams felt like memories from another life. In this life, I was just Madison Rae, a wife who tried too hard and was never quite enough. But there were still flickers of hope, brief moments that kept me moving forward. Sometimes the baby would kick so strongly it would make me gasp out loud, and I would smile in the darkness, my hand cradling the little foot that pressed against my skin. In those moments, I felt strong. I felt like I could endure anything as long as it meant protecting this little life growing inside me. I even imagined the day Oliver might change. Maybe when he saw our baby for the first time, his cold eyes would soften. Maybe he would realize how much I had done, how hard I had worked to keep this family together. I clung to those maybes like a lifeline. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner when I heard the front door creak open. My heart jumped in my chest. Oliver was home early. I quickly wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the living room, forcing a smile. "Welcome home," I said softly. He didn't even look at me. He dropped his briefcase on the couch and loosened his tie, his expression blank. "Where's the beer?" he asked. "I'm sorry," I said, feeling the sting of guilt, even though I had nothing to be sorry for. "I forgot to buy it today." He didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, his jaw tightening. "Go get it." "Now," he said. "It's late, Oliver. I'm tired and it's hard for me to move around," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Don't argue with me," he snapped. "You forgot, so you fix it. You think your mother got special treatment when she was pregnant? Stop acting like a princess." His words hit me like a slap. I wanted to scream to tell him how unfair he was, how much it hurt. But I knew how he was when he was angry, how his voice would only get colder, his words sharper. So I put on my coat and stepped into the night, each step feeling heavier than the one before. As I walked to the convenience store, the street was quiet, the air cold against my flushed cheeks. I held my belly and whispered to my baby, "I'm doing this for us. I'm sorry." And in that dark night, surrounded by the silence of the world, I realized how small and alone I felt. But even in that loneliness, there was a tiny flicker of strength, a promise to myself and my baby that I would keep going no matter how much it hurt. The days passed in a blur, one much like the next, but each carrying me closer to the day my baby would be born. My back ached constantly, and the weight of my belly made everything feel like a mountain to climb. Yet I kept moving, kept working, because if I stopped even for a moment, I feared I'd sink under the crushing pressure of it all. One rainy afternoon, as I folded laundry in the living room, Oliver came home early. His parents had called, he said, and they wanted us to join them for a family trip. The words fell like an axe on my shoulders. "A trip," I repeated, blinking in surprise. "Oliver, I'm due any day now." He didn't seem to care. "It's just for a couple of days. My parents want to spend some time with us before the baby comes." I hesitated. My gut told me it was wrong, dangerous even, but Oliver's eyes flashed with annoyance. "Don't start with your excuses, Madison. You're not an invalid. My mother traveled until the very last minute when she had me." His words stung. They always did, especially when he compared me to the perfect image of his mother. I wanted to protest, to tell him how I felt, but my throat closed up. He'd never listened before. Why would he, now? The next morning, I woke up with dread in my chest. I packed my hospital bag just in case, a small act of defiance in a sea of compliance. As we loaded the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that this trip was the last thing I should be doing. My body felt stretched to its limits, and every small ache sent panic rushing through my veins. Oliver, are you sure about this? I asked softly as he slammed the trunk closed. I'm really not feeling well. You're always complaining, he snapped. It's just a few days. Stop worrying and get in the car. So I climbed into the passenger seat, clutching my belly protectively. My baby kicked softly, as if sensing my fear. I whispered, Hold on, little one. We'll be okay. The trip began in silence, the rain tapping softly against the windshield. I watched the trees blur past, trying to calm the storm of worry inside me. Oliver didn't glance at me once. His jaw was set, his eyes fixed on the road. Halfway there, a sharp pain gripped my lower back. I sucked in a breath, pressing my hand to my belly. Oliver, I said, my voice trembling. I think something's wrong. He sighed in irritation. What now, Madison? My water just broke. I whispered, panic rising in my throat. Please, we need to get to the hospital. Oliver slammed on the brakes, the car skidding slightly on the wet road. He turned to me, his face twisted in disbelief. You're joking! I'm not! I cried, tears springing to my eyes. Please, Oliver, the baby. He shook his head, his face turning cold. You're going to ruin the car, Madison! Get out! I stared at him, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. What? No, I can't! I need to go to the hospital. Get out! He yelled, his voice cutting through me like a blade. You're not making a mess in here. Go take care of it yourself. Before I could even react, he opened the passenger door and shoved me out into the rain. My legs buckled as I landed on the wet pavement, the shock of the cold water mixing with the warm flow of my own. I gasped, clutching my belly, my mind reeling. Oliver! I screamed, but he was already closing the door. Please don't leave me. But he did. The car roared to life and sped away, the red taillights disappearing into the darkness. For a moment, I just knelt there, the rain soaking me to the bone, the world a blur of pain and disbelief. Then instinct took over. I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. My vision swam tears and rain and fear mixing until I could barely see. The operator's calm voice was a lifeline guiding me through the panic. But as I waited for the ambulance, another voice called out in the night. Madison! I looked up to see Jasmine, my kind neighbor, running toward me, her umbrella forgotten in her hand. She reached me in seconds, her arms strong and sure as she helped me to my feet. Oh, Madison! She said, her voice breaking. You're going to be okay. I've got you. I clung to her, sobbing with relief. She called for a special taxi and held me close as we waited, her warmth a shield against the cold. You're not alone, she whispered, her hand stroking my hair. I promise you're not alone. The ride to the hospital was a blur. Jasmine sat beside me, holding my hand and murmuring words of comfort. My contractions grew stronger, each wave of pain crashing over me like a storm. But I focused on her voice, on the calm in her eyes, and somehow I kept breathing. When we arrived at the hospital, Jasmine stayed by my side until the nurses took me in. Even as I was wheeled away, I could see her face strong, steady, a beacon of hope in the chaos. Alone in the sterile delivery room, I closed my eyes and tried to focus on the life inside me. We're almost there, I whispered to my baby. Just a little longer. I thought of Oliver then, of the way he'd pushed me away, how he'd chosen his pride over his family. The thought should have broken me, but instead it steeled me. Because in that moment, I realized something: I didn't need him. I didn't need his approval or his love. I only needed the strength inside me and the life I was about to bring into the world. The pain grew sharper, more urgent, but I welcomed it. Each contraction was a promise I was stronger than the hurt he caused me. I was stronger than the fear that had kept me silent for so long. As the night stretched on, my mind drifted back to Jasmine's words. You're not alone. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. In the early hours of the morning, my baby's cries filled the room, soft and perfect. I held him close, tears streaming down my face, and whispered, We're safe now. In that tiny, perfect moment, everything else fell away. But even as I cradled my newborn son, I knew this was only the beginning. Oliver was still out there. His cold eyes, his sharp words, they weren't gone. But neither was my resolve. I would protect this little life with everything I had. I would never let anyone make me feel small again. As dawn broke over the hospital, I closed my eyes and made a silent vow I would build a life where love wasn't something I had to beg for. A life where my son and I would never feel that kind of loneliness again. Jasmine's presence was like a light in the darkness. In those desperate moments after Oliver's car disappeared down the road, she had been there holding me up when my legs refused to stand. Even as the rain poured around us, she had shielded me with her kindness, guiding me to safety when everything else in my world had fallen apart. In the hospital, after the pain of labor had faded into a soft blur, I lay in a quiet room, holding my newborn son. His tiny breaths, warm and perfect, were a balm to my shattered spirit. But I couldn't shake the memory of Jasmine's unwavering strength, of how she had stood beside me when no one else did. The nurses came and went, their voices gentle, their hands careful. My baby slept in his bassinet, his face so peaceful it brought tears to my eyes. I felt like I was living in a dream, one that was somehow both beautiful and terrifying. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Oliver's cutting words or his mother's icy glare. I was thinking about this small miracle in front of me and the friend who had made sure I wasn't alone. A few hours later, Jasmine appeared at the doorway of my room carrying a basket of fresh fruit. Her smile was warm, her eyes bright with relief. "Madison," she said softly, stepping forward. "How are you feeling?" I tried to sit up, but my body was too tired, so I just leaned back against the pillows. "I'm okay," I whispered, though my voice shook. "Thank you, Jasmine. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there." She set the basket down and took my hand in hers. "You don't have to thank me," she said, her voice firm but kind. "No one deserves to be left like that, especially not you." Her words brought tears to my eyes again. I thought of how Oliver had driven away, leaving me alone in the rain, and how Jasmine had been the one to pick me up from the darkness he had created. In that moment, I realized how deeply I had underestimated the power of a friend. Jasmine pulled a chair close and sat beside me. She didn't speak right away. She just held my hand, letting the silence stretch between us. It wasn't an empty silence. It was comforting, like a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I could feel the weight of everything she wasn't saying, that she saw my pain, that she understood how much I had endured. "I've known about Oliver's behavior for a while now," she said eventually, her voice steady. "I've seen how he treats you. I didn't want to interfere, but after what happened, I knew I couldn't stand by any longer." I blinked in surprise. "You? You knew," she nodded. "I may be your neighbor Madison, but I'm also a woman. And I've seen the way he talks to you, the way he dismisses your feelings. You're stronger than you think, you know that." A small, shaky laugh escaped me. "I don't feel strong. I feel broken." Jasmine squeezed my hand. "That's what he wants you to feel. But you're not broken, Madison. You're just tired of carrying someone else's weight. And that's not the same as weakness." Her words washed over me like warm water, softening the hardness that had built up inside me. For so long, I had believed that if I just tried harder, if I just worked more, I could make Oliver happy. I could make him love me the way I needed to be loved. But Jasmine was right. My exhaustion wasn't weakness. It was the price of fighting a battle that wasn't mine to win. As the sun began to set, Jasmine leaned back in her chair. "There's something else I need to tell you," she said carefully. "I didn't want to bring it up before, but I think you need to know." My heart thudded in my chest. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "My husband, he's Oliver's boss. I've tried to keep my distance, but after what happened, I showed him the video of that night, the one where Oliver forced you out of the car." I stared at her, stunned. "You? You showed him?" "I did," she said firmly. "I thought it was time someone else saw the truth." My husband was horrified. He said he'd handle it. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The idea that Oliver's boss, someone who had the power to affect his entire life, now knew the truth was both terrifying and freeing. For so long I had been afraid of what people would think if they knew how Oliver treated me. But now I realized that the shame wasn't mine to carry, it was his. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I looked at Jasmine. "Why are you doing this for me?" I asked in a whisper. She smiled a soft, sad smile. "Because you deserve better. And because no one else was willing to fight for you. So I will." The room was quiet again, the only sound the soft breathing of my baby. I reached out and took Jasmine's hand in mine, holding on tightly. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking. "Thank you for seeing me." She brushed a tear from my cheek. "Madison, you've always been seen. You just needed someone to remind you." In that moment, I felt something shift inside me. A small crack of light in the darkness. Jasmine's friendship was more than just a kind gesture. It was a lifeline. A promise that even in my weakest moments, I was never truly alone. The next day, as I lay in bed, watching my baby sleep, my phone buzzed with messages from Oliver. His words were frantic, apologetic, but I felt nothing but a cold, quiet resolve. He could beg, he could plead, but he would never touch this new life I was building. Not again. When Jasmine visited again that afternoon, she brought flowers from her garden, bright yellow daffodils, their faces turned toward the light. She placed them in a vase by the window, their colors a stark contrast to the sterile hospital walls. "I want you to remember something," she said as she adjusted the flowers. "This is your fresh start. You don't have to carry his shame anymore. You're free now, Madison. Free to be the mother you want to be. The woman you want to be." As she left, I watched the daffodils sway in the soft breeze from the open window. For the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe it. I was free. And with that freedom came a quiet, fierce determination to build a life where my son would never see his mother as a shadow, where he would grow up knowing that love wasn't supposed to hurt. Jasmine's friendship had given me more than rescue. It had given me the courage to imagine a new future, one where I didn't have to beg to be seen to be heard, one where my voice would be my own. The days that followed felt like a strange, tender dream. I was still in the hospital, but every hour that passed, I felt myself growing stronger, more certain of what I needed to do. My baby slept beside me in a small bassinet, his tiny fingers curled in a way that made my heart ache with love. Each time I looked at him, I felt something new bloom inside me, something that had been trampled down for so long hope. Jasmine visited me every day, her quiet strength a balm for my soul. She brought warm soup and fresh fruit, her words always gentle, always reminding me that I was not alone anymore. She never pushed me to talk about Oliver or what came next. She just sat with me, sharing stories about her own life, filling the room with laughter and light. It was during one of those visits that Jasmine told me about the video. I had known she'd shown it to her husband, but what I hadn't known was how quickly it had spread. She pulled her phone from her purse and showed me the post, a blurry video of me soaked in rain and fear clutching my belly as Oliver's car sped away. My face wasn't clear, but there was no mistaking what was happening. The video had been posted by a stranger, someone who'd witnessed that terrible moment, and decided that the world needed to see it. It had gone viral, shared thousands of times with strangers from every corner of the country, offering words of comfort and outrage on my behalf. As I scrolled through the comments, a part of me felt raw and exposed, but another part of me felt an unexpected surge of relief. Finally, the truth of what I had lived was out there, no longer buried in the silence of my home. Jasmine placed her hand on mine, steady and warm. "People are talking about what he did, Madison. They're not just talking, they're demanding accountability." I swallowed my throat tight. "What about Oliver? He's been suspended from work," Jasmine said, her voice calm. "My husband believes that a man who can't protect his own family has no place in his company. It's more than just about you. It's about what kind of person he is. And now everyone can see it." I stared at the screen at the flood of supportive messages and felt the weight of years of self-doubt and fear begin to crack. I had spent so long trying to hide the truth, to protect Oliver's image, even as he tore me down day after day. Now that image was gone, and with it, the power he'd held over me. But Jasmine wasn't done. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. There's more. My husband spoke with some of his contacts. Oliver's behavior has become a topic of conversation, not just online, but in our community. His parents have been bombarded with questions. People want to know how they raised a man who could do something like this. I bit my lip, torn between a sense of justice and a deep, gnawing guilt. I didn't want to ruin them, I said softly. I just wanted him to stop. Jasmine's eyes met mine, full of understanding. You didn't ruin anything, Madison. He did that all on his own. And his parents. Well, they chose to enable him, didn't they? This isn't your burden to carry anymore. Her words settled over me like a warm blanket. I realized then that I had spent so long carrying not just Oliver's cruelty, but the weight of what others might think if they knew. I had believed that silence was strength, that enduring was the only way to protect the fragile illusion of a family. But Jasmine was right, it wasn't mine to fix. It never had been. Later that night, after Jasmine left, I lay in the quiet room with my baby sleeping beside me. The soft glow of the moon poured through the window, silver light illuminating the tiny rise and fall of his chest. I reached out and stroked his cheek, marveling at how peaceful he looked, how perfect. In that stillness, I found a moment of clarity. The world outside was swirling with gossip and judgment, but inside this small room, there was only love, pure and simple. My son didn't need a father who would treat him like an inconvenience. He didn't need to grow up in a home where anger crackled in the air like a live wire. He needed me whole and unafraid. The next morning, Jasmine returned with news. I've been talking to some people, she said, her tone carefully measured. There's a lawyer, a good one, someone who can help you take the next steps. I felt a shiver of fear and excitement ripple through me. Divorce, I said, tasting the word on my tongue. It felt heavy, but also liberating. Jasmine nodded. It's your choice, Madison. But you don't have to do it alone. We spent the afternoon going over what I would need, documents, records, everything that would prove how long I had carried this weight. Jasmine's calm efficiency was contagious, and by the end of the day, I felt like I was no longer just surviving, I was fighting back. That night, as I lay awake in the quiet hospital room, I thought of Oliver. I thought of his sharp words and cold eyes, of the way he had driven off without a second glance. But I also thought of Jasmine, of her steady hand on my shoulder, her unwavering belief that I was worth saving. For the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine a future without him. A future where I didn't have to apologize for who I was, or tiptoe around someone else's temper. A future where my son and I could build a home that was warm and safe and filled with laughter. It was a fragile dream, but it was mine. And that night, as the moonlight spilled across my baby's sleeping face, I promised him and myself that I would do everything in my power to make it real. The next day, Jasmine's husband visited the hospital briefly. He didn't say much, just offered a kind smile and a firm handshake, assuring me that whatever happened next, I had allies. When he left, I felt a small surge of gratitude for this unexpected army that had risen up around me. But there were still moments of doubt, moments when I felt the old fear creeping back in. Each time my phone buzzed with a message from Oliver, my heart would seize up old habits, urging me to answer to placate him. But I didn't. I let the phone ring and fall silent, each unanswered call a small act of defiance. As I watched my baby sleep, I whispered to him the truth that Jasmine had reminded me of: you are not a burden. You are my strength. And in that quiet room, I felt a new kind of peace settle over me. I knew the road ahead would be long. There would be court papers and angry words, family members who couldn't understand why I was walking away. But I also knew that I was done living in the shadow of someone else's shame. Jasmine had shown me the power of speaking the truth, even when it was hard, even when it made people uncomfortable. She had shown me that sometimes the only way to break free was to let the world see the cracks. And so I did. The days following Jasmine's visit were a blur of paperwork and whispered conversations. My parents came to the hospital, their faces tight with worry and quiet resolve. They didn't say much, but every touch of my mother's hand on my hair and every squeeze of my father's shoulder against mine told me what words couldn't. "We're here. We're with you." Jasmine connected me with the lawyer, a kind-eyed woman named Ellen, who spoke softly, but with a confidence that cut through my lingering fear. We sat together in a small meeting room off the hospital lobby, Ellen's notepad filled with notes, as she listened to me pour out the truth. The nights of cold silence, the days of endless work and endless blame, the final night when Oliver had left me alone on that rain-soaked street. It's clear Ellen said, her voice calm but firm. "This isn't just about divorce, Madison. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your safety, and your future." Her words settled over me like a balm, but they also felt like a challenge, a call to step out of the shadows I'd lived in for so long. I nodded slowly, my heart thudding with a new, unfamiliar rhythm determination. That night, as I lay in the hospital bed with my baby sleeping in the bassinet beside me, I stared at the ceiling and let the truth wash over me. I had always thought that loving Oliver meant making myself smaller, quieter, more accommodating. I had believed that if I just tried hard enough, if I just gave enough of myself, he would see me, truly see me. But in the pale glow of the hospital's nightlight, I understood the truth. No amount of love could fill a heart that had no room for it. The next morning, Ellen began the process of filing the divorce papers. The weight of that word divorce felt heavy in my chest, but it also felt like a doorway opening onto a new world. One where my voice mattered, where I could choose my own path. Oliver must have sensed the shift in me, because that evening he called. My phone buzzed insistently on the nightstand, his name flashing across the screen, like a ghost from another life. I hesitated, then picked it up more out of curiosity than anything else. "Madison," he said, his voice strained. "I've been trying to reach you. You're not answering my calls." "I've been busy," I said quietly, my voice steady. He huffed as if my calm was an insult. "I need you to come home. This is all getting out of hand. My parents are furious. My job is on the line. You're making things worse for everyone. For everyone." The words echoed in my mind, sharp and absurd. I felt a laugh bubble up, but it caught in my throat. "Oliver," I said, my voice gentle but unwavering, "I'm not coming home." There was a long pause. "Don't be ridiculous," he said finally, his voice rising. "You're my wife. You belong here." "No," I said, feeling something inside me settle like a stone at the bottom of a river. "I don't belong anywhere you can't see me or respect me. I'm done pretending." His voice turned pleading, then a tone I had never heard from him. "Madison, please. We can fix this. I'll try harder. I'll change." I closed my eyes and breathed in the quiet strength that Jasmine and Ellen and my parents had wrapped around me. "It's too late," I whispered. "I'm choosing a different life. One where my son grows up seeing his mother as someone strong, not someone who bends until she breaks." Oliver was silent on the other end of the line. Then, in a final desperate burst of anger, he said, "You'll regret this, Madison. You'll see no one will want a woman who walks away from her husband." But I didn't flinch. "I'd rather be alone than live in your shadow," I said. And then I hung up. I handed the phone to Ellen the next morning. "Can you keep the messages, just in case?" I said. She nodded, her calm gaze meeting mine. "I'll handle everything," she assured me. "Focus on your baby. Focus on yourself." And so I did. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of paperwork and small victories. Each form I signed felt like another step away from the life I'd been trapped in. Oliver's parents tried to call me, tried to guilt me into silence, but I ignored them. My father, usually so calm and patient, took the phone one afternoon and said in a voice I'd never heard from him, "My daughter doesn't owe you anything." The line went dead after that, and I felt a quiet thrill of vindication. It wasn't just about leaving Oliver, it was about finding my own voice. I saw it in the way my baby would curl his tiny fingers around mine, in the way Jasmine's laughter could fill a room, in the way Ellen's calm words gave me courage. I saw it in the small, ordinary joys I began to reclaim for myself. The softness of a warm blanket, the smell of fresh coffee, the feel of the sun on my face as I stood at the hospital window with my baby in my arms. I knew there would be more challenges ahead. Oliver's voice still rang in my mind some nights, but it no longer held the power it once had. The echo of his words was just that, an echo fading with each breath I took. One afternoon, Jasmine came to visit again, bringing a tiny pair of hand-knitted booties for my son. She sat with me, holding my baby in her arms, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "You're doing it," she said softly. "You're building something new." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle into my bones. "It still feels unreal sometimes," I admitted, "like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." She shook her head. "You've already lived through the worst, Madison. Everything from here is yours to create." As she left, I watched her go, my heart full of gratitude. Jasmine had become more than a friend. She was a sister of the soul, a quiet warrior, who had stood beside me when I didn't have the strength to stand on my own. That night, I held my baby close and whispered to him, "You and me, little one. We're going to be okay." And I believed it. Because in the end, the most important choice I had made wasn't to leave Oliver or to file the papers, it was to choose myself. To believe that I was worthy of love, of safety, of a life where I didn't have to shrink to fit someone else's mold. And in that choice, I found a strength I didn't know I had. The morning of my hospital discharge dawned clear and bright, as if the world was holding its breath in anticipation. My parents arrived early, their faces filled with both relief and quiet pride. Jasmine was there too, standing by the door, her smile as warm as the morning sun. She took my hand as I gathered my things, her steady presence, a reminder of the journey I'd survived, and the future I was determined to claim. As I cradled my baby in my arms, I realized that the most profound lesson I had learned wasn't just about leaving a man who couldn't love me, it was about learning to love myself. I understood now that love wasn't about shrinking to fit someone else's world. It was about standing tall, even when it felt like the ground might crack beneath your feet. It was about choosing yourself over and over, no matter how many times life tried to tell you that you weren't enough. Outside the hospital doors, the air was warm, the scent of early summer in every breath. My baby shifted in my arms, his tiny fingers grasping at nothing and everything all at once. I pressed a kiss to his soft cheek, feeling the weight of all the moments that had led us here. I whispered a promise to him, one that I knew I would keep. "You will never have to wonder if you're loved, little one. I will show you every day." As my parents helped me into the waiting car, I caught sight of Jasmine in the rearview mirror. She raised her hand in a small wave, and I knew in my heart that whatever came next, I wasn't walking this path alone. Oliver's calls and texts still lit up my phone sometimes, but they were just static now, echoes of a past I no longer lived in. My future was mine to shape a canvas, waiting to be painted with the colors of hope and courage. I took one last look at the hospital, then turned my face forward. "Let's go," I said, my voice strong. And with that, I stepped into the unknown, knowing that for the first time in a long time, I was finally truly free. Oh,